I could forgive them. But I don't want to. My name is Mira, and for most of my life, I was the one who stayed quiet, gave everything, and asked for nothing in return. I've said that sentence so many times in my head it feels like a lullaby now. Not loud, not bitter. Just settled. Like dust after something falls apart. It was my 35th birthday. The kitchen smelled of roasted chicken, garlic, and lemon, the kind of scent that wraps around you like a memory. I'd cooked it just like Mom used to when I was a kid, before everything turned into duty and obligation. Before love started to come with terms and silence. I had set the table for 5. Ridiculous, I know. 5 matching plates, 5 wine glasses. Cloth napkins. Candles flickering like they were nervous. I even sliced oranges to float in the pitcher of water. I wanted it to feel warm. I wanted it to feel like someone might come through the door. But the room was still. Too still. The wind pushed gently at the windows, brushing frost into little curves across the glass. Outside, the world was quiet. Inside, I stood there and stared at the table like I'd set it for ghosts. I had messaged them 2 weeks ago. Nothing dramatic, just a casual invite. Hey, no pressure. Thought it'd be nice to have a small dinner. Just us. I'll cook, smiley face. My mother saw it but never replied. My brother said he'd try depending on work. My sister claimed the kids had practice and her husband had something at the office, but maybe we could celebrate later. Later never comes. It's always just far enough away to be meaningless. I sat down anyway, because somehow I still believed someone might show up. Not because they remembered, but because maybe they felt it, that I was waiting. Then my phone lit up. I shouldn't have looked. I should have known better by now. It was a photo in the family group chat. A table longer than mine, in some cozy restaurant with fairy lights and fancy desserts. There they were. Mom, my brother, my sister, even my niece. Smiling. Someone had written, family time. Red heart, red heart, red heart. They were all there. Together. Without me. No one had mentioned it. Not a word. It wasn't a mistake. I knew that with the same certainty I know my own name. I hadn't been invited. Again. I didn't cry. That would have been easier. I just stared at the screen. My chest didn't ache, it hollowed. Like someone had scooped the center out of me and left the shell upright, polite, functioning. I muted the group chat. Not because I was angry. Because I didn't want to see what they'd post next. My fork clinked against my plate as I cut into the chicken. It was perfect, juicy, tender, laced with rosemary. I had made it with care. But it tasted like nothing. Just warmth in my mouth. No comfort. I tried to remember the last time someone had cooked for me. A real meal. A plate handed to me without expectation. I couldn't. I thought of all the things I had done, not just this year, but for the past 10. The way I'd driven my brother home from the clinic when no one else wanted to deal with him. The nights I sat up talking my sister through her crumbling marriage while she cried in her laundry room so the kids wouldn't hear. The money I sent to help Mom cover things she'd forgotten to budget for. The time I took off work. The holidays I rearranged. Always showing up. Always giving. And yet, somehow, always the one left out of the photos. The stories. The dinners. The warmth. It's not that they hated me. That would have been easier too. At least it would have had shape. No, I was simply useful. Like a phone charger or an extension cord. Something you don't think about until it's not working. I cleared the plates. One by one. No messages came through. No apologies. No one said, "We forgot you." Because they hadn't. They remembered. And they chose. That's what hurt. Not the absence. The decision. I walked into the bedroom, changed into soft pajamas, and shut the curtains. Outside, snow had started to fall, soft, steady, clean. The kind of snow that covers everything until it looks new again. In the corner of my room sat a small box. Inside were gifts, ones I had picked up throughout the year. A scarf my sister said she loved. A rare book my brother mentioned once. A delicate ornament I bought for Mom. I had been collecting them quietly, the way someone collects hopes. I hadn't wrapped them yet. I lifted each one, felt its weight in my hand, and placed it in the trash. No dramatics. No fire. Just a decision. I walked back to the dining room and blew out the candles. One by one. With each breath, the room grew darker. But the kind of dark that made space for something new. My phone buzzed. A message from my mother. Hope you're okay. We were all just catching up. Let's find a time soon to celebrate you. Love you, Rehat. No mention of my dinner. No acknowledgement. No apology. Just a shallow ripple on the surface of deep water. I put the phone face down. Not out of spite. Just done. I poured the rest of the wine into my glass and took it to the living room. No music. No show. Just the sound of my own breathing and the soft ticking of the wall clock. This wasn't a meltdown. It wasn't rage. It was a release. I thought of something my niece had written in a thank you card when she was 9. It's still on my fridge. Glitter, marker, uneven letters. Thank you for always being there. I looked at it now and thought, not anymore. Not because I stopped loving them, but because I started remembering I could love myself too. I'm not angry. I'm just finished pretending I don't see the truth. Let them feel the silence. Let them wonder what changed. Let them taste, just once, what it's like to set a table and find someone missing, someone who mattered. Because I did. I still do. And I won't spend another year hoping to be seen by people who trained themselves not to look. They didn't even notice I was gone. That was the part one kept circling around in my mind like a stone in my pocket. Cold, smooth, worn down from being handled too often. The truth I couldn't unsee. After I muted the chat, after I threw away the gifts, after I blew out the candles, I waited. Not in a dramatic way. I didn't sit by the window or pace the floor. But I thought maybe, just maybe, someone would notice. Ask. Reach out. Say something real. They didn't. The next morning, I woke up early, like always. My body still believed in being useful. I checked my phone out of habit. A few scattered messages in the group chat, jokes about the food at the restaurant, a blurry picture of my niece playing with her dessert spoon. Nothing addressed to me. Nothing about me. It was like I'd never existed in the conversation at all. I stared at the ceiling for a while. Something inside me had shifted, quietly, like a door slowly swinging shut behind me. I wasn't angry. I wasn't sad. Not in the loud, crying on the floor kind of way. I just felt hollow, weightless in the wrong way. Like a balloon someone let go of without realizing. It wasn't just last night. It had been years. I saw it more clearly now. All the little moments where I was allowed to contribute but never allowed to belong. I was the one who drove them to the airport, who filled the fridge when Mom was sick, who remembered everyone's birthdays. I gave and gave, but somehow I was always the footnote. The one behind the camera. The invisible glue. When I was a child, I remember this feeling. I would stand in the hallway at night, hearing laughter from the living room, my mother, my siblings. I'd peek around the corner, and they'd be watching something together, a movie I hadn't been told about, inside jokes already forming without me. When I walked in, the energy would shift. Someone would say, "Oh, Mira, you're still awake?" Like I was interrupting something I was never meant to be part of. At school, it was the same. I did well. Not spectacular, just steady. I wasn't the one who won awards, but I was the one who helped others win them. Quiet tutoring sessions in the library, staying after class to organize the science fair, volunteering for projects no one else wanted. I didn't shine. I supported. Even at work now, I'm the one who fills in the gaps. The reliable one. The one who picks up the extra shifts, remembers the coffee orders, trains the interns. The one everyone thanks in passing, then forgets by Monday morning. There's a word that came to me as I sat there on my bed, wrapped in the old green cardigan no one but me remembers. Shadow. I've lived my life in the shadow of everyone else's spotlight. Not by accident. By training. Somewhere along the way, I was taught not with words, but with silence, that love had to be earned. That to matter, I had to give more, be more, carry more. But here's the thing about shadows. They're only visible when someone else is standing in the light. And I'm tired of only existing in relation to someone else's needs. I got up slowly, made myself tea, and sat by the window. The snow was still falling. Thin, soft sheets of white layered over the backyard like nature trying to erase the past. Cover everything. Make it new. The steam rose from my mug in delicate spirals. I watched it fade into nothing. And for the first time, I realized that's what I had become. Steam. A warmth that disappears as soon as it leaves the cup. No more. I opened a drawer in the kitchen and pulled out an old notebook, the one I used to write in before life got too loud. Inside were scattered lists, a few recipes, half-finished letters. On one page, I had written, "What would I do if I stopped waiting to be invited?" I had underlined it 3 times, then left the rest of the page blank. Back then, I didn't know how to answer it. Now, maybe I did. The first thing I did was check my bank account. Not because I needed to, I knew what was in there. I just wanted to see the numbers and remember, I had kept them all afloat for years. Quietly. Automatically. Subscriptions. Tuition. Grocery apps. Last-minute transfers with no thank you and even fewer repayments. I made a list. Everything I was paying for. Everything they didn't even remember came from me. I stared at the list for a long time. Each item felt like a weight I'd been carrying on my shoulders. No wonder I was tired. No wonder my spine ached. No wonder my joy felt like it belonged to someone else. I didn't cancel anything that day. Not yet. I just looked at it and said, soon. There's something else I remembered that morning. A few years ago, during a Thanksgiving dinner, my brother made a toast. He was holding a glass of wine, flushed from laughter, and he said, "We're all lucky to have each other. Especially you, Mom. You're the glue." Everyone nodded, smiled, raised their glasses. And I sat there, the one who had cooked half the food, cleaned the house, picked up Mom's prescriptions that morning, and made sure the kids had games to play. Not a word was said about me. I had become so invisible in my own family's gratitude that they forgot I was part of the equation at all. I was the glue. And yet no one saw the cracks that formed in me from holding it all together. That memory bloomed in my mind like a bruise, not fresh, but still tender. I got up and opened the cupboard where the photo albums lived. Heavy ones, covered in dust. I hadn't looked through them in years. I brought one to the table, flipped it open. Photo after photo. Birthdays, holidays, road trips. And in every one I was on the edge. Off-center, holding someone else's coat, carrying a tray, taking the picture instead of being in it. Always present, never seen. I flipped to the back. A photo I barely remembered from my 26th birthday. Everyone had come over that year. I'd made pasta from scratch. My niece had helped. I could still remember the sound of her giggle when flour landed in her hair. In the photo, my sister was blowing out the candles. Not me. They had sung happy birthday, but not to me. It had become about something else. It always did. I sat there, staring at that image, and I felt something loosen inside me. A knot I'd been ignoring for years. It was unraveling now, slowly, with every breath. I thought of how many times I'd minimized my own needs. How often I said, "It's okay, don't worry," when I was hurt. How many events I skipped to babysit. How often I made sure everyone else had a gift, a ride, a meal, and told myself it didn't matter if I got nothing in return. But it did matter. It mattered because over time, I forgot what it meant to want something just for myself. I forgot how to ask. I forgot how to believe I was worthy of receiving anything that didn't come with strings attached. The realization didn't crash in like a wave. It settled over me like falling snow, soft, silent, irreversible. I wasn't part of the family. I was a function, a role, a fallback plan, and I had filled that role so well, they forgot it was a person doing it. I closed the album, placed it back on the shelf. I didn't need to see any more. The silence in the house felt different now. Not lonely. Clear. I made a new list that afternoon. Not tasks. Not obligations. A list of things I would no longer do just to be tolerated. I wrote, I will not show up to be ignored. I will not carry guilt that doesn't belong to me. I will not pay to be forgotten. I will not shrink to fit a space I've outgrown. I will not apologize for walking away from a table where I'm no longer welcome. I read the list out loud. My voice didn't shake. And then I smiled. Not because I felt powerful, but because, for once, I felt real. The snow outside kept falling. But inside, something had begun to thaw. Some endings don't begin with words. They begin in silence. Mine started with a single click. It was late on a Sunday, the kind of evening where the sky turns a soft bruised blue and the world seems to pause between the noise of the day and the hush of the night. I had just finished washing the last of the dishes from dinner. Just me again. Leftovers packed away with more care than I ever received in return. The kitchen light buzzed gently above me, warm but dim, and the snow outside had begun again. Thicker this time. Slower. The kind that clung to everything: rooftops, tree branches, the silence between heartbeats. I sat at the kitchen table and opened my laptop. The screen glowed against the dark room, cold and too bright, but I didn't turn on another light. I wanted it this way, half-shadowed, quiet, stripped down to only what mattered. One by one, I opened the tabs. The recurring payments. My name on things that weren't really mine. My niece's tuition account, the grocery delivery subscription for Mom, the auto transfer I'd set up for my brother after his third missed rent payment last year. None of them had asked lately. They didn't need to. They assumed. I hovered over each line. This wasn't punishment. This wasn't revenge. This was recognition. I had spent so many years giving as if it were my currency for belonging. Like if I stopped, I would vanish. Maybe I would have back then. But not now. Now I knew that if the only way to be loved was to be useful, then it wasn't love at all. It was dependence in disguise. So I canceled the tuition payment. Then the grocery account. Then the rent support. Each click felt like a breath I didn't know I'd been holding. Not cruel. Just clean. When I was done, I closed the browser and sat still. The kind of stillness that comes after a storm has passed, not because the world is safe, but because there's nothing left to lose. The next morning, I didn't send my usual check-in message to the family chat. I didn't text my sister to ask how the kids' soccer games went. I didn't call my mother to remind her about her prescription refill. I simply didn't show up. It felt like peeling off a costume I'd been sewn into. Layer after layer of responsibility stitched into my skin. And beneath it me, raw, unsure, but whole. The house was quiet. No notifications. No requests. No demands. For the first time in years, I drank my coffee while it was still hot. And when I looked out the window, I saw something I hadn't noticed in months. The way the morning sun hit the snow and made it sparkle like tiny stars trapped in ice. It was beautiful. And it had nothing to do with anyone else. It existed without needing to be witnessed. Later that day, my sister called. I let it ring. I didn't hesitate. Not out of anger. I felt none, but out of clarity. If I picked up, it would start again. The slow unraveling. The gentle hooks. The guilt disguised as love. Instead, I turned the volume down and kept folding laundry. My own things. For my own space. She texted after. Hey, just checking in. We haven't heard from you. Everything okay? I stared at the message. I could have replied, I'm fine. Or just tired. Or busy with work. But none of those were true. I wasn't fine. I wasn't tired. I wasn't busy. I was just finished. Finished giving to people who only noticed my absence when it became inconvenient. So I didn't reply. And the silence stretched. By evening, my brother messaged too. Something about needing a quick favor. A document from last year. A skin I had stored for him on my drive because he'd lost it 3 times. You still got that tax thing? Can you send it to me real quick? No greeting. No, how are you? Just assumption. I didn't answer him either. I sat in my room with the lamp on low and wrote in my notebook again, the same one that asked me months ago what I would do if I stopped waiting to be invited. This time, I answered. I would let the silence speak for me. And it did. Every unread message. Every canceled payment. Every door I didn't reopen. Outside, the snow thickened. A quiet, relentless curtain falling over everything. I stepped out onto the porch that night, wrapped in a long coat and scarf. The air bit gently at my cheeks, clean and sharp. The kind of cold that made you breathe deeper, slow down, take notice. Streetlights cast long, golden reflections on the fresh snow. Not a single car passed. Not a voice echoed. Just me, standing in the quiet. I thought of all the dinners I cooked, the rides I gave, the late-night calls, the holidays where I shopped and wrapped and cleaned while others laughed and posed for photos. I thought of every time I was told, "You're so strong," as if strength was the prize I got for never asking anything for myself. But strength without rest is a sentence. And I was done serving time. I went back inside and turned off my phone. For the next 2 days, I didn't touch it. No emails. No social media. No updates. I read a book cover to cover. I baked a pie for myself. I lit a candle that smelled like pine and cinnamon and didn't remind me of anyone but me. And for once, I didn't feel selfish. I felt sacred. Like something once broken learning how to carry its own pieces, not to fix them, but to honor that they were mine. On the third morning, I woke to a message from my mother. Are you upset with us? I feel like something's wrong. Did I do something? The irony made me laugh. Not harshly, not bitterly, just a soft sound in the quiet of my room. I thought of how many times I had asked that question in my head, silently, swallowing it down, every time they excluded me, forgot me, used me. But no one had ever noticed my hurt enough to ask it back. Until now, when my usefulness vanished. I didn't reply. I wasn't ready. Not because I was punishing them. Because I was protecting me. That evening, I took a walk. The snow was deeper now, but the sidewalks had been cleared. Trees shimmered with ice, branches like crystal fingers reaching for the sky. It was quiet. Peaceful. The kind of peaceful that feels earned. I walked slowly, breathing in the cold, watching my breath curl in front of me like smoke. Each step felt like a declaration. I am here. I exist. Even without their approval. Even without their affection. Especially without it. A neighbor I'd never spoken to nodded and smiled as I passed. I smiled back. Something about that moment stayed with me, the simplicity of it. No history, no weight. Just two people recognizing each other in the quiet. When I got home, I made soup. Nothing fancy. Just warmth in a bowl. I ate it by the window, watching the sky turn from pink to gray. There were still no apologies. No understanding. Just confusion in the messages. Polite concern laced with subtle guilt. But I didn't engage. Not yet. Maybe not ever. Because I was beginning to understand something I had never been taught. Love doesn't require sacrifice. Not the kind that erases you. You don't have to earn a seat at the table you set. And sometimes, the bravest thing you can do is to stop showing up for people who never looked up to see you there. The first real sign that they noticed came 4 days later. I was making tea when my phone started buzzing. Not just once, but twice. 3 times. Then 5. My sister, then my brother, then my mother, all in a row as if coordinated. I let it ring. I poured the water, stirred in the honey, and sat by the window as the steam curled into the cold air. It was starting. At first, the messages were coded in politeness. Hey, we've been trying to reach you. Everything okay? Been a while since we heard from you. We miss you. Miss me. A phrase thrown like a rope, expecting me to grab it and climb back into the pattern, to reassure them, to soothe them, to pretend I hadn't noticed how invisible I had been all these years. But I didn't reach for it. I sipped my tea and let the rope fall. The next day, the tone shifted. The warmth faded, replaced with confusion laced with criticism. Mira, this isn't like you. We're worried. You're acting distant. Is this about the dinner? You could have just said something. Could I have? Would it have mattered? I'd said things before. Small things. Quiet things. Hints and soft pleas. It would have been nice to be included, or I wish someone had told me. But those words always fell into silence, like pebbles tossed into deep water, no ripple, no echo, no change. They didn't hear me until I disappeared. And now, my silence was louder than anything I'd ever said. By the end of the week, their discomfort began to spill over. My niece called me sweet, hesitant. Aunt Mira? Mom's been weird lately. She said you're mad at us. Are you? That question stopped me. I took a breath, steady and slow. No, sweetheart, I said gently. I'm not mad. Just doing things differently right now. She was quiet for a moment, then said something that stayed with me. It's quieter without you. That made my throat tighten. Not because I felt guilt, but because it was true. I had always been the steady hum in the background, the quiet melody beneath the chaos. And now, in my absence, the silence wasn't peaceful, it was exposing. I didn't blame her. She was just a child. She saw more than the adults gave her credit for. What followed wasn't a confrontation, not in words, but in behavior. Suddenly, my mother started posting photos of family meals again, but this time with captions like, "Family means everything." My brother left voice messages, longer now, explaining how things have just been hectic and how no one meant to leave me out. They used the word misunderstanding like a magic spell. But it wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a pattern. One I had finally stepped out of. And without me, the structure began to tilt. They scrambled to fill the gap I left behind. My sister asked in the group chat if anyone could pick up groceries for Mom. No one answered. She asked again the next day, still nothing. Eventually, she messaged me directly. I know you're upset, but Mom really needs help this week. I read the message once, then again. I thought about all the times I had dropped everything to help, without being asked, without anyone noticing, and now, with just 1 week of silence, my absence had become an emergency. Still, I didn't reply. That silence, it wasn't spiteful. It was sacred. They thought I was withholding something from them. But the truth was, I was returning something to myself. The more I said nothing, the louder their panic became. My brother sent another message, this one sharper. I don't know what's going on with you, but freezing everyone out isn't fair. We've all got stuff going on. I almost laughed. Fair. As if fairness had been part of the equation when I was showing up at every turn while they disappeared behind excuses and forgetfulness. I didn't respond. And then the guilt began to disguise itself as concern. My mother wrote, Mira, I raised you better than this. This coldness isn't who you are. But it was. It always had been. She just didn't recognize it because I'd buried that part of me to keep her warm. I turned off my phone again. There was something strangely peaceful about watching the unraveling from a distance. Not vindictive. Just truthful. For years, I had been the quiet engine of their convenience. The organizer. The fixer. The backup plan. But without me, their machine stalled. And still, no one asked the right question, not, why are you doing this, but how long have you been holding this in? The answer, a lifetime. One night, I walked past the hall mirror and stopped. I barely recognized the woman staring back. Not because I looked different, but because I felt different. There was a stillness in my eyes. A strength that came not from anger, but from finally allowing myself to stop fighting to be understood. I had always wanted a family that saw me. What I had was a family that needed me, as long as I didn't ask for anything in return. Now, they were uncomfortable. And in that discomfort, they showed me their truth. They didn't want to understand. They wanted things back the way they were. Predictable. Easy. One-sided. But the door had closed. Not slammed. Not locked. Just gently, firmly shut. And behind it, I was learning how to breathe again. A few days later, a message came from my sister. No pretense. No emojis. I don't know what you're trying to prove, but this is hurting everyone, especially Mom. She's been crying. That was the move I'd been waiting for, the manipulation disguised as guilt. The attempt to place their discomfort on my shoulders again. But I didn't feel guilty. I felt free. Because for once, their reactions weren't my responsibility. I had given them every version of myself they asked for. I had stretched to fit every role, smiled through every dismissal, offered love in the face of absence. Now, I was offering absence in the face of disregard. And they didn't know how to bear it. I walked to the window that evening as the sky turned lavender and watched the world fade into soft, powdered white. No phone in hand. No messages waiting. Just me, present, whole. And in that stillness, I whispered something I never thought I'd say. Let it fall apart without me. Some freedom doesn't come with fireworks. Sometimes it arrives as a quiet room, a full breath, and the absence of a familiar ache. It had been 2 weeks since I stopped replying. 2 weeks since I began living like I mattered, not to anyone else, but to myself. There had been more messages. Long ones, short ones. Messages layered with memories, guilt, flattery, frustration. I didn't block them. I just didn't answer. And then, as all noise does when it isn't fed, it began to quiet. The daily check-ins stopped. The family group chat returned to photos, comments, half-hearted exchanges. My name didn't appear, but I watched from a distance, not to punish myself, just to understand. They had adapted. Slowly, awkwardly. My brother began handling things he once defaulted to me for. My sister arranged rides and reminders. My mother, well, she found new ways to phrase her needs in broader, more public posts, as if hoping someone else would offer to carry what I used to hold. But I was done holding what was never shared. The final note came in the form of a card. Not from any of them. It was in my mailbox, unmarked envelope, cream-colored paper, my name written in soft cursive ink. Inside, a message. You probably don't remember me. Years ago, you stayed after one of our workshops and sat with me while I cried. You didn't ask questions. You just listened. I was 17 and convinced no one saw me. You did. You reminded me what it felt like to be enough. I've never forgotten. Thank you. No name. Just an initial, L. I sat down on the porch steps and read it again. The cold seeped through the wood, but I didn't move. I couldn't remember exactly who it was. But I remembered that moment, or many like it. The way I always leaned in, always poured out, always offered the warmth I never quite received back. And this letter was a gift I never asked for but needed. Proof. Not that I was good. Not that I was selfless. But that I had been seen. That something I gave without condition had taken root somewhere. And that someone, somewhere, carried it forward. I looked out across the street. A woman I didn't know was pulling her trash can in from the curb. A little boy was walking a scruffy dog that looked too strong for him. The wind was soft that morning, brushing past like it didn't want to disturb anything. And I realized I was at peace. Not the kind that comes after a resolution, but the kind that rises when you stop begging for one. It wasn't perfect. My heart still ached sometimes. I still replayed conversations I never had, lines I wished I'd spoken, moments I'd hoped would come. But I didn't ache in the same place anymore. That empty table from my birthday? I'd taken it apart. Put it away. Now, a small round table sat by the window, just big enough for me and a book, or tea, or the quiet. No placeholders. No illusions. In that same corner, where the family photo once hung, I'd placed the letter from L. I framed it, not to glorify the pain, but to honor the truth that I could offer something beautiful to the world and still keep some of myself. The messages from my family still came, occasionally, especially around holidays. One arrived a few days before the new year. We miss you. It's not the same without you. Please come by, even just for a little while. No apology. Just longing, laced with expectation. I didn't respond. Not out of malice, but because I had nothing to say that would fit inside their frame. They still saw me as a puzzle piece that had slipped out of place. But I was never part of their picture. I was the border they didn't notice until it was gone. And I no longer needed to explain why I left the table. The silence had done what words never could. Some nights, I'd walk around the block, scarf tucked into my coat, breath forming little clouds in the air. Neighbors would nod. Strangers would smile. It's strange how, when you stop trying to be seen by the people who refuse to look, the world opens up in softer ways. I started painting again. Badly, joyfully. I covered the small room upstairs in canvases and colors. I burned cinnamon-scented candles without associating them with anyone else. I made food that only I liked. And I stopped reaching backward. I didn't send long texts explaining my silence. I didn't attend gatherings where I knew I'd be expected to perform gratitude. I didn't give updates on my healing. Because my healing wasn't a performance. It wasn't for them. It was mine. One morning, I passed by my old childhood park. The swings were frozen in place. The metal slide gleamed silver against the snow. A little girl ran past me, red mittens, 2 braids, cheeks flushed with joy, and for a second, I saw myself in her. Not the tired version. Not the quiet, apologetic version. But the girl who used to laugh without checking who was watching. The one who believed her presence alone was enough to be invited, included, loved. I closed my eyes and smiled. I hadn't lost her. She had just learned to stay quiet, waiting for the moment I'd remember she was still there. And I had. That night, I lit one candle. No occasion. No guests. Just me, in the stillness, listening to a soft piano song on the record player. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I felt free. There would be other dinners. Other holidays. Other messages I might read and choose not to answer. But I no longer carried the weight of their approval. I no longer believed that my silence was something to fix. It was something to cherish. The sound of choosing peace over noise. Of no longer giving just to be tolerated. Of no longer waiting to be remembered. Of no longer rescuing people who didn't realize I was drowning to keep them afloat. I didn't need them to understand. Or agree. Or change. I only needed to remember this. You don't have to earn love. You don't have to perform worthiness. And sometimes, rejection is love too, the kind you finally offer yourself when no one else does. So I sat there in the golden hush of evening alone. But not lonely, and warm. For the first time in a very long time.